if you're fortunate enough, as most people, frankly, in the media and in the political sphere are, you don't pay a lot of attention to grocery prices on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't impact you as much, which is why it's so interesting to me, Buck, that how many times have economists been surprised and inflation been higher than their expectations? Virtually every month. When Joe Biden came into office, I believe inflation was 1.4%. Virtually every month since then, it's gone up. And people have said, oh, this is a surprising number. You know who it's not a surprising number to? People who live paycheck to paycheck.
It was a bit surreal, Clay. You teed this up yesterday that we looked at the CPI numbers. We say, hold on a second. They're really going to throw a victory party at the White House when you have the Dow having one of its top 10 worst days ever. Everyone who understands them, we'll get into this in a second. The recession is coming, folks. I mean, You won't find anybody.
We're probably already in a recession, but
the pain,
it's going to exist.
They're delaying the pain as much as they can till after the election. I mean, here is CNN, because they had this moment of cognitive dissonance where Allison Camerata is talking about the Trump speech. I'm sorry, the Biden speech. And on the stage, or rather on the screen, they had the stock market plummeting simultaneously with Biden saying, not a joke, folks, everything's awesome.
So I thank the Republicans who stood up.
Okay, you're listening there to President Biden at the White House. He's celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. He says that he's been fighting Big Pharma for decades. But there is this unfortunate split screen right now with the Dow taking a total beating, down more than 1,200 points. And so it feels like it's hard to be celebratory for some people in the crowd.
Yeah, this is the day on which the White House celebrates the Inflation Reduction Act, when we get a new report that shows that inflation is still especially high. And what we're seeing on Wall Street is a reaction to that, anticipating what's coming from the Fed, the decision that will come on whether to increase. Well, likely they will increase, but by how much, the interest rate.
So just the split screen is between reality and propaganda, Clay. That's actually what CNN had to notice there, because the numbers don't lie.
When I saw yesterday morning, I was reading, I read the New York Times, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. I read the Axios Morning, I think was where I saw this. They have a good morning email sort of distillation that I subscribe to. And every now and then my jaw drops just when I see something that is so dumb I can't believe that it's possible. I saw that they were celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act on the day that the inflation numbers were coming out. And this was early in the morning before they were released, I think at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. And I thought to myself, this seems like a really bad idea. And Buck, they get tipped off the night before in the White House to what the numbers are going to be. I don't know how many people get to see those numbers. So they knew as they were preparing, they were sitting out the chairs, getting James Taylor that they had show up and sing a random
another rich
song.
Communist, yes.
But as Steve Ducey pointed out this morning when I was on Fox and Friends with him, the song is actually about suicide and drug addiction. So that he was singing, an odd choice for a celebratory event anyway. And we know Biden is in cognitive decline, Buck. But every single advisor to Biden who signed off on this idea should be fired because they are too dumb to be advising any president. I don't think we can even put this on Biden. Somebody pitched him the idea and they did this. And they're too dumb to even be allowed to be employed in the White House, in my opinion.
I would also note, have we ever had a president before? There are a lot of things, a lot of addresses given outside. I know this seems small, but I actually don't think it's small. This wearing of massive sunglasses during public appearances. Have you ever seen a president before give a public address with sunglasses on like this? I mean, I don't know, maybe when George W. went to Baghdad or something. But they're doing it so you can't really see his eyes and his face.
Yeah.
And so you can't see that his eyes are glued to the prompter. He's reading off it. It's a high wire act. He could fall off at any moment. This is meant to hide the cognitive decline. I don't think it's a minor thing. The optics of this really matter. And they need to think of the optics and the theatricality of all of this. When you had we had CNN before. I mean, Neil Cavuto with a bit of a, Neil is a very, very even-keeled, very reasonable guy. He had to give a bit of a roundhouse kick here from Realityville based on the numbers that came out yesterday.
But for years, Big Pharma blocked Medicare from negotiating lower drug prices.
All right, I do not want to be a party crasher, but we interrupt this celebration for a hard, cold dose of reality. Stocks tanking because inflation is accelerating. The very inflation that the president said he's made great progress addressing, heralding his Inflation Reduction Act as the boon for the economy that we didn't see in a key number out earlier today. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And Fox on top of a sell-off, the likes of which we've not seen in quite some time. In percentage terms, the roughly 4% hit in the Dow is the worst we've seen in 2 years. Ditto the S&P 500. And again, the NASDAQ. All hit and hit hard because inflation remains stuck and no one can get it under control.
That's a Cavuto flying elbow. Let's be honest. He's throwing one there.
But you're setting yourself up. I agree with you on the sunglasses. They're making an optical choice that he looks less old and dementia-ridden if they cover up a huge percentage of his face with those shades. They made a calculated decision, Buck, to do this on this day and to do it at a time when the stock market is still up on the screen. Right? So, I mean, they could have done, if they want to do this stupid Inflation Reduction Act celebration, they could have done it at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. It's still daylight. They could still be outside in Washington. They could still beat, the evening news or whatever. They did it right as the stock market was closing. And to me, it's a different level of incompetence because in their planning, I think they expected for the inflation numbers to come down substantially, for the storyline to be, we're kicking inflation's ass, and look at how the stock market is roaring back in response favorably to what we're doing. Instead, it was the exact opposite. And I just come back to this again and again. Why are Republicans starting to have more success? Because Joe Biden talks more. I don't think it's a coincidence that when Joe Biden went on the month-long vacation, basically, and got COVID, and he was in South Carolina, and he was in Delaware, and they hit him, his approval ratings tick up. But when you actually watch this guy speak, and when he tries to make the case for anything, the overall amount of American public who looks at him and thinks, this is a guy I'm happy to have in charge of the country, is not very substantial. And so Republicans win the more Biden talks.
And so how long with these rate hikes, Steve, will it take to see inflation come down? Using this blunt instrument, this tool of raising rates to bring it down, is that a short-term goal or is that something that takes a lot of time?
That's exactly the right question, Willie. And what yesterday's numbers did was it increased the probability of there being what we're calling a hard landing, that there's going to have to be a recession here to get inflation down anywhere near the Fed's 2% target. And so we're going to have to see what comes of it. But it's certainly not going to happen in the near term. There's only one more report before the midterm elections, and we're looking at a much longer process than that. And the question is going to be how consumers react to these numbers, both economically and politically.
So that was a top Obama-era economist, Steve Ratner, on TV, saying what I think should be obvious now. The recession, he also calls it the hard landing, it's coming. And the whole game right now for the Democrats is to convince everybody really of, I guess, two things. One is it's not coming, which is just a lie. And two is don't worry. This guy, Joe Biden, he's got a handle on things. He knows what's going on.
Think about what you'd think about at the time. Think about how you'd feel if you didn't have the insurance and didn't have the money. It's wrong. It's not who we are, and we're going to fix that, too.
Who is that old imbecile shouting at, really, yesterday? That's what you want to know.
Why is he always screaming? I think it probably, unfortunately, has something to do with the dementia where you're not able to really, you just get angry for no reason. And
well, it's a part. Isn't sundowning? Doesn't sundowning, which old people can have as they get to that age, you're more irritable and you get tired, but also you get more irritable, and there's issues that come later on in the day. I mean, this is get off my lawn, angry old Biden stuff you're seeing in this bizarre celebration speech yesterday. What they're celebrating the passage of a bill that they say will reduce inflation. Then they mutter a whole bunch of stuff about prescription drugs and then some Green New Deal stuff. The whole thing is just wacko.
Yeah, it's very strange. And again, it's about trying to convince people that Biden has got control of inflation, even while everybody out there understands that that's not occurring. You know, grocery prices are up 13.5%. If you're fortunate enough, as most people, frankly, in the media and in the political sphere are, you don't pay a lot of attention to grocery prices on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't impact you as much, which is why it's so interesting to me, Buck, that how many times have economists been surprised and inflation been higher than their expectations? Virtually every month. When Joe Biden came into office, I believe inflation was 1.4%. Virtually every month since then, it's gone up. And people have said, oh, this is a surprising number. You know who it's not a surprising number to? People who live paycheck to paycheck and recognize what $100 in a week means extra.
That price sensitivity isn't a theoretical for those who are going to be putting money on credit, putting groceries and gas on credit cards, running up that debt now. And it's funny when you have someone like Joe Scarborough yesterday. He's like, man, this is really hitting the working folks. I'm like, oh, really, Joe? Do you speak to your gardener about it? Is that, you feel their pain, huh?
Listen to Joe Biden. This is, I think, earlier in the week. But this is Joe Biden trying to say United States of America. This was put out by the RNC yesterday. Listen to this.
This is the United States of America, for God's sake.
Oh my God.
I mean,
I hadn't heard that till
everybody Let's play that one more time. I just want everybody to hear it.
God.
Everybody misspeaks. But if you are the president of the United States, I would like to think that you could say United States of America clearly. Let's listen one more time to our chief executive, the man who has his finger on the pulse of America, Joe Biden.
This is the United States of America, for God's sake.
It is the United States. A lot of that.